Hey everyone, Jim Coventry from Rotowire here. Today we are going to talk about the NFL news and notes from a fantasy football perspective. First, I want to do a little talk about the Cincinnati Bengals. Joe Burrow, after the appendectomy, is now participating in 7-on-7 drills in practice. That's definitely the right road to recovery. We expected he'd be long ready for the regular season based on a normal recovery from an appendectomy, and we're almost a little less than a month in from the season, so Joe Burrow should be just fine. And also T. Higgins, who had a shoulder issue procedure, he has been cleared for 11-on-11 on drills, so that looks wheels up for him. But let's talk about what we're going to see from this Bengals passing attack this year. So first of all, I explain this frequently. Joe Burrow last year, we know the offensive line was horrible. He frequently had to get the ball out quickly, basically, so he wasn't going to get drilled by defenders. And the downside of that was often, not always, often T. Higgins and Jamar Chase were unable to run the full development of their routes. They often had to break routes off. Burrow had to get the ball out. So even though both were outstanding players, we didn't see them at their very best. But as we've said now, the Bengals bring in three good offensive linemen. And I think now, instead of being a horrible line, they are at least an average line, maybe a little better than average even. This is huge because now, as I mentioned earlier, imagine Higgins and Chase being able to run their full routes, Joe Burrow being able to go to check downs and progressions to find the most optimal play. Now, many will cite the Bengals had an easy schedule last year, and they will also cite that this year it's a much more projected difficult schedule. I get that. Completely understood. I also get the fact that the league will make adjustments for Jamar Chase. And that's true because we already saw it last year when the Bengals played the Ravens, the Steelers, and the Chiefs a second time. The Chiefs was a playoff game the second time. Each of them significantly limited the impact that Chase had on them in the first contest. Now, the Raiders played them twice, but the Raiders really didn't make adjustments for anybody. They played that Gus Bradley defense, and so that, they didn't stop anybody. And then the other time was the Browns really didn't play them twice because the Bengals didn't play their starters in week 18. But in those games, Chase was significantly limited. Here, we are going to see, like we saw with Mahomes, it's a league-wide trend. We're going to see these two high safeties to try to limit big explosive plays. But what I think we saw that the Bengals were already starting to see some of that. That was some of the reason why Chase didn't have the monstrous. He had that huge game in week like 16. But again, it was the first time they played Kansas City. But some of the games weren't the ceiling games because they were throwing more underneath. We saw a little of that in the playoffs too. But Chase is one of those players, even if he isn't always going deep downfield, you can get him on a crosser, on a drag route, and he can use that insane acceleration and agility to make plays there. And then T. Higgins is a co-alpha. So they can't lock down on any one of them. Now, they're both going to do their damage because they both are alphas, and defenses really can't let the middle of the field free because Tyler Boyd is an excellent slot receiver. And I know they'll say he's the lesser of the three evils, but regardless, you can't let Tyler Boyd just function because he will rip you up. And I think Hayden Hurst is a massive upgrade over CJ Uzama, who I always saw as a blocker, who had almost 500 yards last year. And Hayden Hurst, I think, is going to be a definite improvement there. So defenses are really going to be in trouble here. And then we have Joe Mixon in the running game. So I think that this Cincinnati offense, remember, we look at the full season numbers, they don't tell the story because they became pass heavy in week 13 on. Those numbers were through the roof after that. We're going to see a lot of that this year. And I don't care what the defenses throw. These are superstars on this offense, three of them, and they are going to be able to beat the defenses. So I'm wheels up on this offense. All right. Zach Wilson of the Jets injured his knee, expected 2 to 4 week after knee surgery. He'll miss a little time. So he could miss the season opener. I'm not overly concerned. Look, I'm not expecting a lot out of Zach Wilson. I believe last year we saw when they had backup quarterbacks, I think Josh Johnson played a game, Mike White played a couple, and, Mike White got figured out pretty quick. But nonetheless, Elijah Moore was productive with three different quarterbacks. And I know, now he's not the only game in town. So I do think that he's my key. Elijah Moore is the key. He's going to run a lot in the slot. He's going to open up the field for the other receivers as well. I think he's going to be the key. The running game looks to be good. Breece Hall should be heavily involved. We also like Michael Carter to have a role there. But I think regardless of quarterback, whatever expectations you had for the Jets, I don't know that it necessarily goes down if Wilson misses time, because I don't think Wilson gives us that high upside play. It'd be nice if he did. From what we saw last year, I think he's going to be a little bit more of a developmental project if he ever becomes an excellent quarterback, which he may. He definitely may. Now, Buffalo's next. A lot of intense talk about the Isaiah McKenzie, Jamison Crowder slot situation. Well, first thing, I was listening to a great show on the Athletics podcast that Joel Biscaglia was on, and he was a beat writer for the Athletic who covers the Bills. He's covered the Bills forever in different forums as well. But he was talking about the team and also the Athletics, and I don't know which Athletic host was on there, but the discussion was that in this year's league, not just the Bills, the number 3 receiver on a team is not going to be the same every week. It's going to be a lot of game plan dependent based on the defensive opponent. Some weeks you need a speed guy. Sometimes you need a more tactical route runner. Some weeks it'll be the tight end. Other weeks it'll be a running back out of the backfield. I do believe that it's rock solid that we were going to have Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis as the 1 and 2 options. But I think that 3 option is going to change frequently, and I don't think we're always going to know. Remember, Isaiah McKenzie's in his 6th year. He really hasn't done much as an offensive player. He's a good returner, excellent there. Actually, they use him there. But as a receiver, he's done very little consistent damage. So I think he's explosive, but I think he just is lacking something in terms of being an effective down-and-down player. Now, the 2 games he did really well. He blew up the Patriots in the regular season, and then he had 45 yards in the playoff game, but with the blowout, he wasn't needed as much. I saw that Brian Daboll had a mismatch because McKenzie's speed would blow away the Patriots' slow defense, and he took advantage of that. But notice, McKenzie wasn't heavily used in any other games. I think he'll have a role in games where they need that speed, but I think otherwise, if Jamison Crowder is healthy, he's a tactical route runner. So when they're playing teams where it's a heavy zone and they just need to get the chain moved in the middle of the field, Crowder's your guy because, and I know he gets hurt a lot, but Crowder. So I think there's going to be games where they both. I really was saying before it was Crowder, but I really think now I'm really buying the Athletic and Joel Biscaglia's talk about how this offensive approach is going to go. And I do believe it's going to be a lot of mix and match. So in your seasonal leagues where you're setting lineups, it's going to be interesting if you're drafting them because it may be one of those things like which week do I start the player and which do I sit them? That could be a problem. And that leads us to James Cook next. Biscaglia was talking about the fact that Cook has a lot of rookie tendencies, pass pro being potentially an issue. And Biscaglia thinks that Cook's going to have a very inconsistent role the first year. And he seemed to intimate that Zach Moss could be a little bit involved here as well. As the press was saying recently, there were reports saying Zach Moss could be involved. Singletary should be the early down guy. He established that last year. I think he took that. But I think with pass pro, Zach Moss is going to be okay here occasionally if they don't trust James Cook in that capacity. So I think it could be dangerous taking James Cook at his ADP if he's not going to be the clear receiving back every week, because that's, I think, what we're drafting him to be. But the Biscaglia report really makes me think this through, and I do think it's possible. And don't forget, Brian Daboll's gone, and we really don't know what we're getting in Ken Dorsey, who's taking over the offense. Let's move to Green Bay. Robert Tonyan and Christian Watson have returned to practice, but pump the brakes for a minute, because first of all, returning to practice and being cleared for game action are 2 different things. Now, maybe they will be ready to go. Maybe Watson will be ready next week. Tonyan, we were concerned about the beginning of the season, but let's take him case by case here. So with Christian Watson, what I want to point out is he has missed valuable reps gaining potential chemistry with Aaron Rodgers. He's behind. That worries me. I think that he is going to lack because of that. And I didn't even know, coming out of a small school, I really didn't know how he transitioned, but I think this makes his rookie year a bit problematic. Can he come in and make a difference? Sure, maybe he can. But right now, I think the odds are stacking against that by the day, while the other receivers are getting reps, especially Romeo Doubs, who apparently is seeming to get some trust from Aaron Rodgers. Interesting. And then Tonyan, don't forget, 2 years ago, Robert Tonyan had that insane season where he literally had 52 targets, but he had like 500 yards and I want to say double-digit touchdowns. The efficiency that season was like unbelievable. repeatable. And last year, that's why I was out on him. Now he got hurt, and so that kind of blew that away, but his numbers were not back to that level. So just understand, though, this year may be a little different. No Devontae Adams. Tonyan, if he's healthy at some point, may need to be leaned on by Aaron Rodgers, so it's definitely worth considering him. Now, if you have an IR spot in your league, Tonyan could miss time early. If he does, and you can stash him on IR, that's even better. But again, if it's a late draft pick and it's a deep league and you could drop him, that's fine. But don't spend a premium draft pick on him, because if he's not ready, if he's not quite right, I think it's a risk you don't need to take. When you could take Austin Hooper, who I think Austin Hooper is going to be very good for the Titans. I think he's going to work very well with his quarterback. So I think that's going to be, Ryan Tannehill's going to like him. And don't forget, Austin Hooper was a top 5 tight end. It's been a while, but competition, after he had to deal with going to Cleveland, they had a 3 tight end rotation, and that was problematic. So, overall, I think Austin Hooper now gets to a situation where things are looking up for him. So again, Tonyan's a good choice, but if you're nervous about the injury, pick somebody like Hooper in your draft. Now, the Kansas City backfield, Ronald Jones, 4 carries, 1 yard. Isaiah Pacheco, 2 carries, 6 yards. It's preseason. Nobody cares. That's fine. But neither got off to a great start in their quest to seize the role from Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Andy Reid does like his veterans a bit. So I think right now, and I thought this before, but this kind of solidifies it, I think Edwards-Helaire gets the shot week 1. If he plays well, he keeps it. If he doesn't, that job could move at any point in time. I think Reid would give him a little bit of slack a week or two, but we'll see how that shakes out. Isaiah Spiller is next. In his season, his preseason opener, 10 carries, 34 yards. No great shakes there, 1 catch for 10 yards, but it wasn't terrible. We've seen running backs that have been drafted by the Chargers in the past completely be horrible. So Spiller getting off to a decent start, we like that. We can live with that. I think he still is in line to get early down work to give Austin Eckler a break. Don't forget, Eckler has said publicly he wanted another back to give him a break. He had a career high workload last year. He's not built for that. He realizes that. He wants to extend his career. He wants to remain explosive. So again, it's no knock on Eckler. He wants that. If Spiller can play well, Spiller is going to have a role, and I'd be stunned if he didn't get at least 170 carries, which would be 10 carries a game. I'd be stunned if he didn't get that, because the team wants to keep Eckler explosive. In Houston, Marlon Mack did get the start. Dameon Pierce did play better. It's preseason game. Again, we don't care what numbers in a preseason game are. We don't care about those. But nonetheless, this backfield could go either way. I still believe that Marlon Mack, being a veteran, understanding pass pro, offensive concepts, I do believe that he gets the crack week 1. If he plays well, I believe he retains it. It's not going to be a workhorse situation, though. I believe it's going to be a timeshare. I believe Rex Burkhead's involved. Pierce and Mack are involved. But if Mack does get the lead role here, his ability to pass, protect, and catch could give him a larger role than Pierce may have. Pierce may be seeding more work. Remember, Pierce is the way higher ADP. Mack's going much later. So if you just want to spend a pick late to see if something works, Mack would be fine, because you could drop him in 2 weeks if you don't like him. If you're spending the higher pick on Pierce, you're a little more invested in that, which could be problematic. Last 2 points for today. Tyler Conklin. I talked about this before. He saw 3 targets to 1 for CJ Uzomah in the preseason opener. I've been saying all along, Tyler Conklin's the guy at tight end. And now he's going to be a super high producer? Probably not, but they're going to need him. He's a receiving tight end. Remember 2 years ago, Kyle Rudolph got hurt. Everybody was excited Irv Smith would be the guy at tight end. Tyler Conklin trumped him, outplayed him, outsnapped him. That was it. Tyler Conklin's the man. Well, CJ Uzomah, he had that great year last year. It was situationally based. Middle of the field was open. He took advantage of it. 2 big games really got half of his season production. But Tyler Conklin's going to be the receiving tight end. Uzomah did get an end zone target in that game, and he's going to get some targets. They're going to play a lot of 2 tight ends in New York. I believe that, to keep Zach Wilson or whoever protected. But Conklin is your guy if you want to tight end. Super late. If you need a 3rd tight end, like in a best ball league where you need 3 tight ends, that's what I'm talking about. You're not taking as a strong tight end too. If it's a lower end tight end too, but I believe his production would be great. Best ball league where you need a 3rd tight end. Last one. This is super deep. If you use some return yardage in your league, Montrell Washington is a name to look at. He's playing for the Denver Broncos, been very, very explosive. But since the injury to Tim Patrick, they've been using him a little bit as a receiver, a little bit as a runner. In the preseason game, they use him that way. Return league. He's supposed to return kicks and punts. That's huge, but he could also see occasional work. Again, he's not going to see more than 3-4 touches as a position player, if even that. But nonetheless, he's somebody in those leagues where you use that. You can look at that. Oh, I'm going to add one more piece here. Chuba Hubbard did work ahead of Deontay Foreman in the preseason opener. That may mean nothing. It may be veteran deference. Hubbard was there last year. Foreman's new. Just understand this could be a job battle for the number 2 role behind Christian McCaffrey. What we saw from Foreman last year, very strong, competent player, played very well in his opportunity in Tennessee. Chuba Hubbard was not very efficient unless Hubbard makes a big jump this year. I do think Foreman comes out of that, but I do want you to be aware this could be a job battle. Thank you for your time. Everybody have a great rest of the night.